Hi.
Evening.
We're here. Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter.
You're pointing in the wrong direction, you know.
I am not. When I point, I'm pointing right at you. And then
when you're on my screen, you're pointing away from me.
Well, considering how your screen has been acting this evening, I'm not really convinced that it's even correct.
I don't know how everyone else sees us, but I see you on the left and me on the right. That's me. No. So we're back. It's Thursday night, guys. If you're new, welcome. Welcome. Hit the subscribe button. Please like. Yes, like and share. Correct.
That's what we ask each and every one of you to do. It is much appreciated if you do so.
Yeah. So that was quite a plane incident last night.
Well, I was flying American, but thankfully it wasn't my plane.
You weren't flying into Reagan. I got to tell you, I'm thinking twice about ever flying into that airport again.
Well, I often say that if you want to know who's in control of DC, just notice the corporate headquarters that is right in your line of sight as soon as you land in Reagan. And that, of course, is Lockheed Martin. So just kind of tell you all you really need to know.
I was just watching David Sirota on with Amy Goodman. And he was apparently he put out an article today really talking about some of the background about why this airport is so dangerous and why it is so overcrowded for how big it is. But I know you'll be shocked to know, but Congress always goes against safety and against the safety experts because they want more flights directly into DC because it's convenient for them and they're on the payroll of the airlines. So
yes,
it's just like everything else. But yeah, this is there. In fact, a couple of months ago, there was apparently a whole report, a whole thing about that this was a dangerous situation at this airport.
Well, this is something that got the arousal, if you will, of a lot of people that are hardened Trump supporters. Look, Trump a week ago decides that he's going to cut, FAA employees.
That's not why this happened, but
I'm not saying that it is, but
yeah.
Make no mistake. You have to be cognizant of where things get cut and where cuts are necessary. One of the biggest problems we do have is the fact that the airline industry in particular are ones that made off like bandits during COVID. Like they really did. And what they did to their employees in particular was equally as disgusting. It is our job on our channel, when we talk about transforming politics into service, the service that we are providing is the type of information that the average person really needs to understand. So when they think on the surface level of what they are seeing and what they are hearing and understanding is very little, if any, to what's really going on.
Yeah, how is, I mean, I don't know what all the talking heads on CNN are saying at this point about the crash, other than constantly listing how many dead, and I mean, like, they're doing all of that stuff.
I mean, I have my theory as to why it happened. The fact
Well,
that it
to
was
me, it goes back to everything. Well, first of all, this is a very unusual airport in that it is so close to where there are military maneuvers and military exercises and military flights. That is very atypical,
Yeah.
which is another reason why there have been safety concerns that have been flagged, particularly about Reagan Airport.
Well,
So
I mean, the
this is a
Pentagon is
known thing.
literally, the Pentagon, I think, is 2 miles away from Reagan. So it's not.
This has been a known thing, and apparently safety experts and people that I don't know are concerned with public safety put forth much information. And again, this was David Sirota apparently had an article about this that was out, and he was on talking with Amy Goodman. But apparently this was a known thing. And shockingly, our Congress is the reason that it is one of the reasons it's so bad there. But the reason that this particular safety stuff didn't go through was they want more flights because they don't want to have to schlep all the way to Dulles. And so they fight to have more flights even when it isn't safe to do so.
Well, the fact that it was a Black Hawk helicopter to me opens up Pandora's box. And look who is here this evening. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
For checking in. I think it's by the way, Steve, Richard Wolff just did a really good 15-minute video about libertarianism. I think you would probably want to check that one out. To me, there's going to be a lot of questions left unanswered because of the fact that I get a little conspiratorial, as you know. I'm of the mind that maybe there was a very important person who passed away.
I think it was like a gymnastics team.
On the helicopter?
No, on the plane.
Oh, well, that's terrible. That's terrible.
Yeah, it was like young. It was I'm not sure if it's gymnastics, but it was like there was like a traveling young people's sporting thing. Like that's because I was originally thinking, wonder who was on that airplane, but it was
no. I was more inclined to say who was on the helicopter.
No, I'm more inclined to think that was just maneuvers and accidents, and it's just a matter of this is not where it's supposed to be. I don't think there's some vast conspiracy, but I was wondering. I wonder who's on that plane.
It's a Shonda.
Figure skaters was on the plane. So not national security threat, mind you.
I didn't think that they were, but
but I'm not thinking the helicopter was either. I don't know. I think that it really was an accident. I do, but it comes down to why would an accident like this keep happen when it wouldn't have to, when you were told months ago that this was a particularly unsafe situation, and yet no one in Congress gave enough of a shit to do anything about it.
Well, we all know what
That's what I think.
Well, what does Congress really care about?
Well, right. So I don't think there's some like somebody was
trying to talk
people.
Well, no, we're going to talk about it with Keaton. What they really care about is looking good in front of the cameras. You see, that's what's important, Jen. You have to remember, keeping up with appearances and pretending to cry like Senator Warren decided to do, that's what matters.
Well, they'll never fail to take, an opportunity to profit. I mean, there's nothing better than crisis tragedy marketing. But I don't think there's some grand conspiracy, but I do think that it's just a sign of failure of our legislative branch and regulatory branches to protect people. And that to me comes down to corruption at the end of the day and self-service, which is what those people in Congress are doing, is they're serving themselves. They don't want to have to, if they come from the middle of nowhere, Kansas, they want a direct flight. God damn it. It's like, that's how it works.
Well, I have accepted the fact that I am now buried in the Florida Panhandle, and I will literally have to connect into almost every airport.
Everywhere.
So, yeah, I am not going to make those demands. It's just part of life. Get used to it. But as we all know, so many people in positions of power, and is often the case in a lot of states, New York, not as much, California, not as much, but a lot of states where people become federal representatives after, let's say, being in the state house. You're talking about going from a state employee salary of maybe $40,000 a year to almost $180,000 a year, and that's not even accounting for all the perks. you probably get some degree of perks at the state level, but nothing compared to the federal level. So you put people in positions of power, and often is the case, and why we see so many yes men on Capitol Hill is because of the fact that they are now in a position that they know that they could never achieve in any other line of work. It's basically this, and they're capped. And that's why they want to be there. And that's why it's infinitely worse on the Democratic side, because they're not even skilled in the private sector. And what are my thoughts, Falcon Eye, regarding the helicopter passengers? I'll keep it simple. Sometimes when it's a government agency and they want to sweep something under the rug, they make it look like an accident.
Okay, first of all, most of the time when anybody wants something to get away with something, they make it look like an accident, okay?
Well, I'm not trying to get our channel more suppressed than it already is.
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And I honestly believe that in this case, the standard corruption is enough of a sufficient explanation as to how an accident like that could happen, that it's like it's hoof sounds, it's hoof clomping in Central Park, man. It's not zebras.
It might be a cigar in one way, and it might be a useful tool in another way. I just have to say that. So
yeah.
With all of that said, we were a couple of the early birds, if you will, but I remember telling Jen a couple of years ago that there are these two Jews from New York. They really know what they're talking about. They really got their shit together. And lo and behold, even when they only had a few live streamers at a time, I thought that they were going to be good. And I thought that they would be big. And we're very happy to see their success.
Where's your finder's fee, Pete?
I don't take no finder's fee. You know what our finder's fee is? Cross collaboration. That's our finder's fee. That is what the true populist left does. They look out for each other. And of course, Dissidence has taken it to another level, and we're very happy to see it. Keaton, Weiss, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey.
Thanks, guys. Great to see you again. It's been a while.
How you doing?
Doing all right. Hold on. Let me get my light here. There we go. See,
so you actually
our channel may have taken off, but I'm still working on $15 ring light technology there.
Well, you see, what ends up happening is when you don't blow up for a while and you kind of have to live by the seat of your pants, even when you have the money, there's like this mindset of, well, we have it now, but it may not last. So we still have to play it close to the chest.
That's true. I mean, I have 3 kids, so I still don't have money. But yeah. So that keeps my tech budget
girls or any of those girls?
No, 3 boys. I have 2 twin 6-year-old boys, and then we just had another guy in July.
Okay, congratulations. But at least there's like more of an opportunity for you to someday have money. That's why I was
so, yes.
Yeah, like there could be at some point in your life down the road.
And since you guys do such a good job of like really digging into shit, and we really love how Russell really goes at it, but do you think there's anything to this crash? Do you think that there could be some type of my thought is that there could potentially be some type of a government cover up. I just can't imagine a Black Hawk chopper crashing into a commercial airline at DC. I mean, that's just me. That's my thought.
What crashed into what?
My theory is that they didn't realize RFK was in town for a second day. They thought he was on one of those planes. And they're like, oh, damn it. That's right. It's 2 days worth of testimony. Fuck.
What hit what? I wasn't
again.
Sure what hit what.
Yeah, I don't really know much about it. I mean, we did our show early this morning. I know there was a crash. I know Secretary Fuckboy there, Pete Hegseth, is on the case, so I'm sure he'll get to the bottom of it. It's a great first test for him. Nice to know, a few days into the job, he gets tasked with looking into this. What did he say?
How is this under him? How is this under him?
It falls under 2 different branches.
Isn't it Defense Department? Yeah,
Defense Department because it is a black because of the helicopter, and then FAA because it's an airline.
Okay, I was going to say.
Yeah, he said it was. So, yeah, I just tweeted this out. Pete Hegseth said the Black Hawk that collided with the plane over DCA was on a continuity of government training mission. Whatever the hell that means.
Right. It was a training maneuver.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, and I see somebody saying it was on purpose. I mean, Peter, do you think, who was on the Black Hawk? Like, that's, right.
I don't know.
So if we don't know, how do we ever know?
And regardless if it's a figure skating team or not, it's a tragedy all the way around, but it's also reflective. Yeah. As we've pointed out, and I believe you guys have pointed out, the airline industry in many ways is reflective of the fall of capitalism, because COVID was a prime example of the shareholders and CEOs making off like bandits. The employees got screwed. And of course, we all know what the major airlines think of their customers.
Right.
Dude, I was just in Vegas and I was staying at the Flamingo. And the last day that I was there, they shut off the water for 8 hours. For 8 hours, they shut off a major hotel in Vegas's water supply. Now, granted, they did it from 12 midnight to 8 a.m., but that's saying two things. One, they do not give a fuck about their customers, that's for sure. And number two, the water crisis is real. And Vegas is one of the first places that's going to end up without water. And I'm looking around at this monstrosity of a city. Now, thank God I didn't see any major construction going on while I was there. But you're talking about like 25, 30 major hotels, like at least a couple of 100,000 rooms total in the greater Las Vegas area. How in the hell do you think you're sustaining that? Especially with water being what appears to be a finite resource in certain parts of the country. Right. And Vegas never shuts off. So I thought that was very telling in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, I mean, on this particular instance, I guess you just got to wait and see until something comes to light.
Well, yeah, I just think the other thing that you left off, Peter, is you gave the first two things it shows. The third thing it shows is that the Flamingo is catering to an old crowd that thinks people are in bed by midnight. That's what it shows to me, because I've never been to Vegas where anything has stopped at midnight.
No, but as somebody who works in commercial real estate and knows about the hospitality industry, I could tell you that it's like they don't want to fix a problem. They just want to suck as much profit out of a given situation as they possibly can. No updating the rooms, no updating the infrastructure, nothing. Doesn't mean anything to them. For them, it's like, okay, the MGM Grand used to be one of the best hotels in Vegas. Now it's a shithole. And so you got the Cosmopolitan, you got the Aria, you got the Wynn, and eventually, perhaps, they'll eventually run out of means, to keep it afloat as a great place. But you know what? When you have a hotel that's charging $800 a night for a stay, they're very specific about who they're catering to. They don't want regular people walking into the hotels. It's supposed to be an elitist playground for a reason. You want to stay at a shithole? Fine, you can afford that. But staying here where the real money exists? Nah, not doing that. So I just honestly, I think, as Jen has pointed out many times before, I think that Trump is just simply going to accelerate this fall from grace that we're having right now. And
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Can't point me in any other direction that's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I think we're well on the way to that already. Well on the way to that. This is why, we were pretty adamant throughout the campaign that you could support neither major candidate. I mean, that's how I saw it. That's how I saw it. And we got the whole, you're black-pilled thing, And I said, look, I'm black-pilled about the election because it's a hopeless election. I mean, that's just the way it is. You know what I mean? Like, what do you want me to say? Make up some narrative about how one of these two would be better. I mean, we have this ceasefire now. Israel's already broken it a few times. They shot a few people here and there. I guess that doesn't count. I guess we don't count that really.
No.
But
that just goes with anything with Israel. Like, they don't ever honor a ceasefire. So I don't know why you'd even bother to have one. I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Trump insisted on that so that he could have the optics of the hostages coming on stage for the inauguration ceremonies, right? He brought some of the hostage families up on the stage. I think that's what he wanted. He got that. He has since said he's not confident it'll hold. He's since expressed the desire to clean out Gaza, and he's going to help Israel annex the West Bank, which is going to be a very violent and bloody project as well. I would always refer to Trump as sort of the gun with one chamber empty if you're going to play Russian roulette, because there's just that randomness factor, that wild card factor. But that's hardly an argument to suggest that there's any real hope in saving this country from the brink by electing Trump. And we did elect Trump, and here we are. I don't feel like we are in a worse spot than we'd have been had Kamala won, precisely because I think this result gave the actual left, some space to breathe and some space to organize without the liberals in our way. We had no space to organize under Joe Biden, nor would we have under Kamala Harris, because, people would always ask us, as creators, why don't you criticize Republicans more? I said, well, because they're not in power. So I find it kind of boring to criticize people who are not in power. And B, with the liberal apparatus, having such a strong presence and being in such a position of power, any voice from their left just gets intercepted by them. They just jump out in front of you with a louder megaphone, and theirs is the message that gets blasted out. I feel now that they are just completely down for the count and completely out of our way. I think it gives us an opportunity to, make a real left argument, a real counter argument to Trump and what he represents, a real resistance, if you will, not a pussy hat resistance, but an actual, substantial one. And that's why, one thing we're really focusing on this month is the Worker Strike Back Conference with Shama Sawant, Jill Stein. Chris Hedges is going to be there talking. Nick Cruz, Russell's going to be there on stage as well. I will submit a video speech, I think. Shama and I are working that out. But we really feel like an organized labor movement is the real project of the next 4 years and onward. I mean, Sean Fain, I have some criticisms of how he handled that labor action. I think he got less than he would have had he held firmer. But if they say they're up for a general strike in May of 2028, which is what he said, then I think that's the North Star we should be working towards. And I think we have an opportunity to do that now because, not to sound like too much of a commie, but the contradictions are sure going to be heightened these next 4 years.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. We had Cenk on the other night, and while the conversation was fluid and, we agreed on some things, but Cenk, unfortunately, is still caught up in this idea that the Democratic Party can be salvaged. And if there has been any indication, at least in the last 24 hours, especially in lieu of how they are conducting business with the RFK confirmation hearing, is that they're not going to change. They have made their bed. They've made it clear that they will bury the Republic in the process if they have to, because they are corporate owned and they have no one of a Trump-like presence that can drag them out of it at this point. And when you saw the list of the people that they think are going to be the nominees for the Democratic Party, granted Gavin Newsom is now out of the equation, right. It's a fucking shit show, man. Josh Shapiro's the number one person you think is going to run for president in 2028? Okay.
Was he number one? I thought there was a poll I saw today that said Kamala was number one at 33%.
I'm not talking about a poll. We're talking about, there was was it a Wall Street Journal article, and they had listed who their thoughts of the top however many people, and their number one they had was Josh Shapiro. That wasn't based on a poll.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's just, of course absurd. Look, there's no one, the Pod Save America guys, as cringe as they are, they did make a decent point on one of the shows they went on recently, where they said, first of all, no one has the stamina of Trump on the Democrat side. No one just creates the volume of content that Trump creates. What did he do? He made 3 speeches on Inauguration Day, basically. He did his inaugural address, and then he did one right after. And then he had a press conference that night while he's signing the executive orders. This is the era of content. Trump really harnessed the power of the alternative media to win this time, going on Rogan, going on Theo Von, going on Andrew Solch's show, whatever it is. I forget the name, but he was a constant presence online and on TV. And the Democrats don't have anyone who likes politics that much. They don't have anyone who's passionate about anything to the point where they're willing to actually put in the FaceTime with the country the way Trump does. Trump is everywhere. He's everywhere.
So, Keaton, I would ask you to respond to Joel Conroy, who says we have to take over the Democratic Party like Trump took over the Republican Party. The Democratic Party is willing to destroy itself to avoid allowing any type of takeover.
Yeah. I don't know why you think there is.
Well, I love hearing you say that of all people, because the very first time we were on the show is when I tried to make that point to you. I hope it's more impressed upon you now than it was. I don't mean that in a nasty way. I'm just saying.
We always knew that. We never disagreed. And again, our situation was not just with one goal in mind and what we were doing and how we did our campaigns. But no, the Democratic Party is a complete waste of time. And anybody, the people that are still holding out hope for that, you guys are like the string quartet on the Titanic. It's you really need to see that. The way this is going to happen is going to be from outside of electoral politics.
Right.
It's got to come from outside electoral politics.
It's
gotta
labor.
come from
Exactly. It's labor.
It's labor
That's what it is.
focused and general strike.
Yep.
And it's going to involve people coming out. And it has nothing to do with Democratic Party. In fact, I would suggest that the Democratic Party is the biggest hindrance that we have to getting anything done anywhere.
Absolutely.
Because like what Keaton was saying, there's no space for opposition when they're taking up the space of something that they're not.
Right. Exactly. Yes. That is a perfect way to put it. Yeah, absolutely. And, there was a poll today that said, Kamala was #1 for 2028 at 33 points. Now, I understand that that's not going to happen. I understand things change, right? Everybody knows you can't take a poll like that too seriously 4 years out. However, in this case, I mean this literally. I literally don't know how anyone, not one person, can be so stupid as to think Kamala Harris should run for president in 4 years. How can you think that?
Only people that want to make money.
A third of respondents? I mean, come on. Like that just goes to show you there is absolutely no way forward inside that party. And and part of why, to respond to whoever sent the chat, sorry, I forget your name. Part of the reason why the Trump insurgency was possible is because right-wing populism does not threaten capital the way left-wing populism threatens capital. So at the end of the day, the Mitch McConnells in 2016 thought, all right, you know what? We can live with this guy. And now they can more than live with this guy. I mean, now not only has he taken over the Republican Party, he's taken over the whole country. It's his country now. And that is a result of the implosion of the liberal project and the complete negligence and mismanagement of the Democratic Party. Look what you have going on now with this migration thing, where you have now Trump, talking about sending them to Guantanamo Bay. Right? How do you think that happened? That happened because liberals for decades failed to make a coherent case.
Obama swore he was going to close GITMO. Yeah. He swore it.
Yep.
That was a campaign promise along the lines of we're going to get people a public option. Like that was one of his big campaign promises in 2008. I remember it well.
Yes, and then Biden promised again. So that's 12 years worth of Democrat administrations with a promise to close Guantanamo, and they did not do it.
No, because it's extremely profitable to have for-profit incarceration in the United States. That was actually one of the big things that Wasserman Schultz was able to skate on in South Florida, because she was adamant about putting a private prison in a town called Southwest Ranches. But of course, Southwest Ranches is where all the rich people live, and they were not having that shit.
No.
And because it's so unbelievably densely populated in Broward County, there is really a limit to where you could have put it anyway. It's not like you could have plotted it in, Hollywood or Dania, where it's a much more working class area. There's just nowhere to go. But yeah, it's 1000% about empire and maintaining it for however long they think they can do it. And I think when you look back on, our efforts to unseat Wasserman Schultz, it's very reflective in how the party has died to protect a dying industry. Yes. There was a tweet that came out the other day from an account I wasn't familiar with, but it showed a statistical data analysis about how the Republican takeover of Florida has been so exponential. It was on a +4 rate back in 2020, which was insane. For 2024, it's at +20. They have completely taken over the state. And in the Democratic Party's haste in Florida, they still reelected Nikki Fried to be the party chair of the state. So that should tell you all you need to know. And that should tell you how dead the party is as encompassing as a whole. Like it really is. And they're going to push Pete Buttigieg to be the next senator in Michigan. Like, come on, guys.
Governor.
No. Remember how the game works, Jen. Gary Peters has decided he's retiring.
So Buttigieg is going to move to Michigan?
He already has.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Oh, I called this like 2 years ago. I said this to Jen. I said
that's why they moved him there, was to run for that.
To be a carpetbagger, because he can't do shit in Indiana. So, of course, he goes to Michigan. And so now what they're going to do is they're going to have him run for the Senate, and Dana Nessel is going to run for governor. So that way everybody gets along and everyone's happy. This Democrats all about camaraderie and happiness. That's the big deal.
You have the McKinsey bloodsucker, and then the Flint cover up. Dana, wow, what a. I mean, there you go. I mean, that just goes to show you there is no reforming a party that would rather self-destruct than bend to your will. And in terms of third parties. Look, I agree with what you said in terms of, you can't really play the electoral politics game now because, we could be entering a Reagan-like era. Like, I think Trump is going to shit the bed. I think he's going to be very unpopular by the end of this year. But I don't know that the Democrats are in a position to take advantage of that. I just don't see them getting in a position to take advantage of that. So, the Republicans could have a relatively good midterm, just like Joe Biden had a relatively good midterm, because the Republicans weren't ready to take advantage of a failed first 2 years. And so, the strategy of a workers' movement and workers' strike back is to build a large and broad-based organized labor force that can threaten to shut the country down until the political class bends to the will of the workers. And at that point, it really doesn't matter as much. Not that it matters not at all. There are obviously some differences between the parties and the candidates, whatever. But it matters less who's in power when you have a big machine you can wield at the system and say, okay, we're shutting the whole country down. That's what the longshoreman guy did. That's what Harold Daggett did in October. He said, I will cripple you. I will cripple you. Right before Election Day, when he had the most leverage, he said, you're going to agree to these terms or I will shut this country down and make this country a living nightmare for everyone in it unless you give my men what they deserve. They gave his men the pay raise that they wanted. And then left outstanding was the automation component. Well, guess what? In January, Trump, very quietly, he didn't tout this because he's not really, I guess, a pro-labor president, so I guess he didn't really see the payoff in touting this. He was able to get them a deal on the automation that they wanted. And why do you think that is? Because he knows this guy's not fucking around. Trump is not a pro-labor president. He just deballed the NLRB, basically. He just fired 3 of the members, so they can't even have a quorum to act. So they're basically a completely defunct organization for the time being. So he's not a pro-labor guy, but the longshoremen proved that they were willing to shut the fucking country down unless they got what they needed. We need to do that with 100 million people. We need 100 million people to do that, right?
So if you could, please share a little bit more information about this event you have coming up on February 22nd, Workers Strike Back, and how we can all, between our 2 channels and other channels out there, I'm hoping, I'm certainly hoping that Jimmy will participate and anybody with these large platforms will do it. How can we continue to coalesce the labor movement going forward?
Right. So I think what's going on February 22nd is Shama Sawant's organization, Workers Strike Back. As you guys know, she quit the Seattle City Council to form this national labor-based movement, which may eventually turn into a new party where they run candidates. But right now, the goal is obviously to build an organized labor force around, some explicitly pro-labor demands. And so on February 22nd, they are having their conference in Seattle. It's 10 a.m. local time, so it'll start 1 p.m. on the East Coast. Russell's going to be out there participating in it and also filming some, man on the street style interviews because it's a convention. So they're having a conference and then, they're having speeches and things like that. And so we're going to be streaming it on our channel all day, probably starting about a half hour before it starts. So we'll probably be live at 12:30 p.m. on the 22nd, and we'll be streaming all day. And what we're trying to do is make a giant super stream out of this. So we're trying to get as many friends of ours and peers of ours in our space with channels to stream it. We're going to be streaming a hybrid of the Worker Strike Back official stream plus Russ's on the ground footage. I'll be kind of in the news van, kind of cutting back and forth between them. And so you could use either stream you want. We'd love it if everybody uses ours since we're going to have some, more behind the scenes interviews and stuff. But we're hoping everybody shares the stream. You could share it right from our YouTube channel onto your channel. And then any channel who does that, and I'm obviously, looks like you guys are on board, which is fantastic. We look forward to it. You guys can, we're going to have people of the different channels sign on throughout the day because we're going to be live for about 10 hours. So we're going to have time for everybody to come in and do a guest spot, talk for a half hour about what they think, how it's going, brainstorm it. So that's the goal. That's the goal, is to get as many channels as possible on board. We're trying to get 1 million views for this conference between all the different channels, and we think we could do that if we build it out. And what I think is really exciting about this is I think it's kind of a relaunch for a left that was sort of left out in the cold after the 2 Bernie campaigns and really silenced throughout the Biden years I think this is a great opportunity to relaunch. You know, Shama is a socialist. She insists that Workers Strike Back, well, she's a socialist, is not a socialist organization per se. There's no ideological litmus test to join. You know, they have certain demands around wages and anti-discrimination practices and things like that, which are all good. But beyond that, you know, it's not a socialist or a communist organization. It's a workers' organization. It's a labor movement. And the thing about Shama that you could say for her that you can't say for most left organizers is she's a winner. She wins. You know, she was able to not only get elected to the Seattle City Council, but keep her seat and actually win real gains for working people in a city dominated by Amazon, Starbucks, and Microsoft. That ain't easy. You know, that takes chops to be able to do that, and she has them. And so I'm really excited about that. And I think I think it's an exciting opportunity. And I think, you know, for all the fears about what the next 4 years have in store for us, and I don't minimize those at all, I ultimately do think this is a more favorable landscape for left organizing than if Kamala had won.
I do too.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that is our future. That is what we have to do. And it was always part of the mission, because even when Jen was running, we always said that the change is going to come through labor. We tried to push it through labor, but unfortunately, there is still a significant amount of corruption within the union infrastructure. You know, even people that are high up within the organization who wanted to lend a hand to Jen, you know, there is a certain level of attachment that a lot of them still have to the Democratic Party. And until we recognize that the best movements that have been out there, the Sunrise Movement, Climate Defiance, you know, there have been these groups that have made some really strong appeals and even gains to an extent. But the second they locked arms with the Democratic Party, that was the end of it. It was over, dead on arrival, and they were never the same. So if Workers Strike Back is legit, which I believe they are, and they are working outside of the two-party system and especially outside of the Democratic Party, then this is not only a group that's going to go places, but is also worth contributing to financially so that they can build their infrastructure. Because at some point, the people in elected office are going to be scared shitless of the power that labor will bring to the table.
Well, absolutely. And that I can promise you that Shama Sawant is as adversarial as could possibly be towards the Democratic Party. There's absolutely zero chance that she will be sheepdogged back into the Democratic Party. I would bet my life on that. You know, when she was a Seattle City Councilwoman, it was the Democratic Party that tried to recall her. I mean, the Republican Party really has no power in Seattle. It's a pretty liberal city. So she fought Democrats. You know, at the time, Bezos supported mostly Democrats. Now everybody's kissing Trump's ring. But yeah, so there's no chance of that whatsoever. It was Shama Sawant who really organized the coalition between the Green Party and the Abandon Harris movement. If you remember, so there was the Uncommitted movement, which kind of became the Sunrise movement of the Muslim resistance to Biden. They didn't officially fold, but they basically did, right? They started releasing anti-Trump ads and saying don't vote for third parties. But the other branch of that was the Abandon Harris movement, which were, you know, mostly Muslim and Arab organizers from in and around Dearborn, Michigan, who boycotted the Democratic ticket with the explicit intent of tanking the Democratic Party in Michigan and therefore nationally. And, you know, Shama's a great organizer. So she sort of merged Abandon Harris with the Green Party and Workers Strike Back. And the founder of Abandon Harris, Hassan Abdel Salam, is going to be at this conference too, as I understand. And so she's a coalition builder. She's a team builder. And to have Hassan there is great too, because, you know, building a labor movement doesn't mean every demand is labor oriented. For instance, you know, to have someone there who put everything on the line to boycott the genocide ticket of Harris Waltz means something. And you had electricians unions come out for ceasefires, you know, very, very early on into this genocide. So working people are more based than we give them credit for. And it's just a matter of organizing them and bringing them together. And Shama's the best in the business at that. Certainly the best who's not going to end up folding back into the Democratic Party. So it's exciting.
Let me ask you, do you know anything about the group that's generalstrikeus.com? Do you know
I don't know that one, no.
Okay, so I hadn't heard of it. I went there today and looked at it, and there's a whole bunch of partners that they have listed there. And it's everything ranging from people doing strike funds and all sorts of stuff. And one of the people, Peter, was Rebecca Parsons, is one of the partners on this group. And so I feel like all of these things need to kind of coalesce. But
Agreed.
this organization, so it's called generalstrikeus.com. I don't know if anybody out there knows anything about this or who's involved. There's nothing on there that says specifically who's doing it, but all of the partner groups are like good. So I actually sent them an email, but this sounds like the kind of thing that should be coordinated. I think that we definitely need to start having general strike funds.
Yes.
And so, I mean, that was just Rebecca's thing, is having her GoFundMe was attached to it for a general strike fund. But that's the concept that we need to be kind of working on universally, because even though I do think labor needs to be the impetus, I think that because of where we are in labor in this country, clearly that's not sufficient. It's going to have to be everybody coinciding with labor. And so therefore we need to have some funding, like resources and stuff. So everyone needs to coalesce.
And
Yes,
speaking
and
of-
sorry, go ahead.
What I was just going to say, Keaton, is that, and especially in a place like Washington State and in Seattle, when you think about single payer healthcare, that's where a group like Whole Washington should be looking to coalesce with a group like Workers' Strike Back.
Yeah, what it requires is the courage to break from the Democratic Party. That's what it requires on a lot of these other groups, because a lot of these other groups, they sound great on paper, their policy is great, but they get cold feet when they are faced with the fear of having no power. And this is why I'm insistent that Trump winning was ultimately, in the long run, a good outcome for the left, because I think it's going to be easier for a lot of these organizations to break off from the Democrats, because guess what, sweetheart, if you're afraid of not having power, guess what? Democrats have no power now. And they're not going to have any power for a long time. So you really got nothing to lose by taking a chance on something outside the system, which is what it absolutely, where it absolutely has to come from. And the idea of a general strike is you make these demands, and like you said, Jen, it's labor based, but not necessarily labor exclusive, in the sense that one of these demands coming out of a general strike should be, in my opinion, must be defund Israel. We're having a general strike where, we're getting 100 million people to not show up to work, and we're not showing up to work anymore until Israel aid is out of the budget, period. Fuck
How
you.
about
That's
medical
it.
debt? How about no more medical debt?
No, I'm saying among the list of demands. Right,
That should be
exactly.
One
Yeah.
of our demands. One of
course.
our demands. Yeah.
So that's what the idea is of an opportunity like this, where they're having a conference where we really get to brainstorm, okay, around which ideas do we organize? Around which demands do we organize? We need to come up with a list of demands so that sometime in the future, I would love for it to happen by 2028. An election year is the best time to do this.
May 1st,
Yeah.
2028, general strike.
Yeah, because that's when you exert the most pressure on the system. That's when the longshoremen decided to drop the hammer. They said, they waited till October, and they're like, give us the money or we're going to fuck you up right before Election Day. So that's the time to do it. You can't just call for it overnight. You need an organized workforce, but that has to be the goal. And look, Democrats and Republicans both need an economy to preside over, right? Like, they wield no power if the economy doesn't function. Donald Trump signed the CARES Act when COVID happened. In a crisis, these people will cave. In a crisis, they'll fold. We just have to create a crisis, and workers have to create a crisis. And this is the main problem, of the last several decades, is workers have been browbeaten and brainwashed into feeling like they're bad people for exerting pressure on the system. They're not supposed to exert pressure on the system. They're supposed to take what the boss gives them and be happy with it. And we have to organize to say, no, you want your country to function. It's going to function on our terms, or it's going to shut down. And a very important point, Jen, what you said is you need a general strike fund, because you need a mutual aid fund to sort of pull people through that. Yeah. Not everybody could afford to just go without for 3 months if there's a general strike. So you need a pool that people can draw from. So if they need money for rent, they can get through it and stay on strike and not cross the picket line.
And that's also the thing that makes Shama such a unique figure in this whole thing, because I think most people do trust her. And she would be the type of person where if she started a general strike fund, that people would actually entrust her to give money to, because you see how many scam organizations are out there. They're completely ill-intended. They say they're doing one thing, they do something completely different. But I really think in a lot of ways we could be thankful for what a absolute colossal fuck up Kamala's campaign was, and how it really got exposed for the absolute grit rift that the Democratic Party establishment is infinitely worse than the Republican Party. I mean, you thought it was bad when Hillary outraced Trump by more than 2-1. Kamala outraced Trump 3-1, and that was within a few months. So it really goes to show you how it's all about just washing this money. And if we're going to put our money, especially the limited money that a lot of people have, into something that they can believe in, I would say that something that Shama is in charge of is definitely something worth doing. And I also think that this is a great transition into a story that just came across the wire earlier today that I had mentioned to Jen. Plot to kill Donald Trump's allies inspired by Luigi Mangione. So apparently somebody up in, I believe, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, a Massachusetts man who told police he came to D.C. to kill allies of President Trump, said he was inspired by the man charged with the killing of United Healthcare CEO, according to the court documents. Ryan Michael English, 24, told the police that he had been thinking about this for a while because of Luigi Mangione. And the reason this matters is that Mangione, facing the charges that he's facing, has really sparked this incredible debate about our need to have single-payer healthcare in the United States. Well, guess what? He is going to ultimately, more than likely, not encouraging anybody to do anything, but is it really a stretch to think that there aren't going to be Luigi Mangione copycats out there, that people are getting so desperate by this broken system that they're going to be like, fuck it, what have I got to lose anymore? I think that that's a real serious thing that people need to be taking into consideration. And this is just the beginning, as far as I could tell. This Ryan Michael English, he didn't succeed in his efforts, but it was enough to get picked up by Newsweek. So who the hell knows how many more of these could potentially be out there, because the system is doubling and tripling down on their exploitation of working people.
Well, the party line on our show is Luigi Mangione didn't do nothing. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Didn't do nothing.
Yeah,
Okay.
he didn't do nothing.
Yeah, I didn't see nothing.
I don't think he did anything. I mean, it seems to me like a guy who was smart enough to pull off that crime and escape a highly surveilled island. The only ways in and out are bridges and tunnels with cameras on them. How was he stupid enough to keep the murder weapon on him and keep his manifesto on his person? So that seems like a setup to me. And if just one juror agrees with that theory, then justice will be done in that case. So I think the case against him is very weak. I don't think he did anything. In terms of what you're talking about, vigilantism more broadly, yeah, I mean, look, nobody cries any tears for Brian Thompson, obviously. But one point that Jordan has made while covering this, and he's covered this a lot, is that look at what they're doing to the immigrants. Look what Chris Hedges says about how, what the way the empire treats people around the world is how they will eventually treat their own. The point being, you see how increasingly fascistic they have gotten in the first 10 days of this administration, to the point where now they're talking about, essentially rebuilding a migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay to house migrants in an extra legal fashion. That's what they'll do to us if copycats start happening. Like, they will respond in increasingly and very rapid in their extremism in fascistic ways. And so that's why, not to be a party pooper or anything, but I do think an organized labor movement is probably a better idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important for people that are not in official unions and in the types of work that have organizations, because most people that are just your regular gig workers or people that are suffering in this economy don't necessarily think of themselves as labor. They're part of that. And those
Right.
are the people, and we are so increasingly in that economy, which is why it's so important for everybody to understand how it affects them, even if you do whatever you do that isn't a typical union type of job.
Right.
And we need everybody in the street. That's what needs to happen.
Right.
And I think that will happen, because people, the great thing about what has happened, if there's a silver lining to the alleged actions of Luigi, is
Right.
this idea that single-payer healthcare is a front and center conversation in a way that, and I'm not putting down Bernie in any way, I think he did a phenomenal job of sparking that conversation, but now the conversation surrounding healthcare in this country is one of absolute rage on the part of most people. They are enraged at how absolutely corrupt and broken this system really is. And I think they have every reason to feel that way. And I also think that they can't put the cat back in the bag. I think that people are getting extremely restless, and this is only going to get worse. I can't see it getting better because the amount of money that private insurance and big pharma spend on a regular basis is so out of sight, out of mind, but it's also because they're trying to maintain a system that doesn't want to maintain itself anymore. They are hanging on so desperately. And this was something that we pointed out on the last story we did regarding Luigi, is that you had that Chinese company Red Note that has a similar sort of TikTok application, and you have thousands upon thousands of video of Chinese, not, I would say, necessarily trolling Americans, but they were all saying, hey, we've got universal health care here in this country. How come you guys put up with the fact that you don't have shit? And that's why they want to shut these applications down, because the American populace is becoming self-aware in a way that I don't think they've probably ever been before.
Absolutely, and especially, I mean, look, we've all heard that Europe has a better sort of social democratic infrastructure than we do, but given all the propaganda about what a dystopian hellscape China is, like, to be red pilled by the Chinese it hits even deeper, because they're like, oh, wait a minute, we were told this is this dystopian sort of like police state. Oh, you mean it costs what did the guy say? It costs $9 for an ambulance ride in Beijing versus here, a few grand. So yeah, no, that was a very, very powerful point. And more broadly speaking, this whole thing with the DeepSeek AI, where they just completely cucked the tech bros. I mean, it's amazing. And I look, I think all this stuff happening at the same time, when Trump implodes, and I think he will. I mean, he already lost a couple points on his approval rating since he took office. He's like 45 now. I think he's going to end the year around 40. That is going to create a cataclysmic moment, because the Democrats are not going to scoop up those voters. Like, there's just going to be a collapse in faith in the system, very broadly speaking, and that's our opportunity. We have not had that opportunity in my lifetime. Bernie will always hold a certain place in my heart, since I kind of, and I don't think I'm alone in this, I think I owe my political awakening to him and his campaign. But for 4 years, he's out shilling for Joe Biden. And now that Biden's out of power, now he's grilling RFK about Medicare for all. It's like, we need you there when the Democrats are in power. You can't just do this when your party is in no position to put this in action. And so, that's his legacy. I think, he, will go down in history as the beginning of something, but I don't know if he has the stones or the gravitas to see it through to the end. So yeah, that's how I would describe him.
Well, that's a great transition, because he did grill RFK yesterday, but I think he's the only person who really tried to do it in a way that was substantive. We could certainly talk about what I know they all suck, but there's something about Elizabeth Warren that is just so disingenuous. I cannot stand this person. And I think that's probably where we should start, because when you talk about the Democratic Party just being absolutely dead on arrival, she in many ways is the embodiment of it. She was so ready, willing, and able to throw Bernie under the bus for what she perceived to be the VP slot. And I guess that's what she was gunning for, because there's no way that person was getting elected president. But there is this kind of showmanship that has been so popular in politics for so long. I'd like to think people are getting sick of it at this point. And so this is what Senator Warren had to say to RFK during the proceedings yesterday.
Do a quick count here of how, as Secretary of HHS, if you get confirmed, you could influence every one of those lawsuits. Well, let me start the list. You could publish your anti-vaccine conspiracies, but this time on U.S. government letterhead, something a jury might be impressed by. You could appoint people to the CDC vaccine panel who share your anti-vax views and let them do your dirty work. You could tell the CDC vaccine panel to remove a particular vaccine from the vaccine schedule. You could remove vaccines from special compensation programs, which would open up manufacturers to mass torts. You could make more injuries eligible for compensation, even if there is no cause causal evidence. You could change vaccine court processes to make it easier to bring junk lawsuits. You could turn over FDA data to your friends at the law firm, and they could use it however it benefited them.
Okay, that's enough of her bullshit.
I can't with that. That to me is very indicative of why our Congress sucks and can't get anything done, because they don't want to have reasonable discussions. They want to go in there and antagonistically fight on behalf of their donors or whatever they're sucking up to. And just the manner in which she's speaking to him is so adversarial. And I can't figure out why. I don't understand why they're talking to him this way.
Well, I think, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where you're just talking about a party that is just going to die on the hill that they're on. Like they're
butthurt of what he did to them. I know that. But
Sure.
that we all tolerate that these are the people and that's how they speak to somebody. Like, why do we tolerate this?
Well, because it's a party of virtue signaling. That's all it is. They made the same mistake with RFK that Trump made with Biden in the 2020 debate, where everybody thought Biden was going to implode, and Trump never gave him a chance to implode. Trump never let him talk. He just steamrolled him. That's what they're doing here. They're just talking at him, getting their talking points in about abortion, about universal health care, and their vaccine talking points, and they're not giving him a chance to talk. Which is very, very stupid if your goal is to sink his nomination. Because here's the thing you have to understand about this, okay? So, like, I talked about this on our show earlier. This is all theater in the sense that the tit for tat of who owns who and who wins what point and what argument, that is not going to determine whether RFK gets through. What's going to determine whether RFK gets through is if the centrists, the moderates, in both the Democrat and the Republican Party get the sense that they can play ball with him, that they can work with him without their pharma donors and their ag donors getting too pissed at them. That's what's going to make the difference, whether he sinks or swim, not whether he owns Elizabeth Warren or whether she owns him. That's just theater. Now, you could say that has some value in shaping the conversation, right, on social media and elsewhere, but that's not going to determine whether he becomes the next HHS secretary. What's going to determine that is the subtleties of what he says, and if the Bill Cassidy's, the Lindsey Grahams think, we can work with this guy. And the only way you're gonna give him a chance to sabotage his nomination is to let him speak and hope that he triggers enough pharma lobbyists to the point where they will make Lindsey Graham's life a living hell if he votes for him. So what that tells me is that this isn't really about tanking his nomination. It's about yucking it up for the cameras and building your profile. It is a circus in that way. It is theater in that way.
Could not agree
they're
more.
nasty, and I think they come off looking just how I thought about how when Stefanik was questioning the university presidents back in whenever that was about the anti-Semitism on campuses. It's not that they're questioning them. It's why do they look so why are they so nasty?
That's intentional.
Because they think it plays well. They think it plays well online. They think they can fundraise off it. They can get a clip of Elizabeth Warren browbeating him. She could send that out to her donors and get checks coming in.
Right. Her echo chamber will think it's fabulous.
Exactly.
But it's just pushing more and more people away from the Democrats. Like, I think now it's here, 20-1 in Florida, Republicans and Democrats?
Yeah. No, it's insane. And if you thought that Warren's attitude was bad, remember little-known Michael Bennet, who decided to run for president back in 2020 as well? Another person.
I barely remembered this guy.
Yeah. Didn't have the balls to run against Hillary Clinton, but, he had the balls to jump in when everybody else did. So he wanted to act like a tough guy to RFK.
Say that COVID-19 was a genetically engineered bioweapon that targets black and white people, but spared Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people.
I didn't say it was deliberately targeted. I just quoted an NIH-funded and NIH published study.
Did you say that it targets black and white people but spared Ashkenazi Jews?
I quoted a study, Your Honor. I quoted an NIH study that showed that.
I'll take that as a yes. I have to move on, Mr. I have to move on. Did you say that Lyme disease is highly likely a materially engineered bioweapon? I made sure I put in the highly likely. Did you say Lyme disease is a highly likely militarily engineered bioweapon?
I probably did say that.
Did you say that?
And that's what
You see, this is what you're talking about, Jen. This is what you mean. It isn't a question of whether he has a point to make. It's a question of, can I make myself look like a big shot to my donors or my sycophants because I'm trying to show that, listen, anybody who heard the actual clip, and there is a clip out there of what RFK actually said regarding Ashkenazi Jews.
Yes.
It is crystal clear what he said, and you are saying that it's something else when anybody with a brain and an open mind can go there and listen to what RFK was actually talking about. He talked about the fact that people of certain backgrounds were susceptible to the dangers of COVID in a way that others weren't, much like people who have diabetes.
But again, he was quoting a study.
But if you look at that too, back to what I was saying earlier. So how does that dissuade one of the swing votes in the Senate from voting for RFK?
No.
All you're seeing is Michael Bennett get free advertising for his email list.
Exactly.
That's all you're seeing in there. You're not seeing any reason to vote for or against RFK. RFK's just sitting there the whole time.
Right. It's all virtue signaling.
Yeah. This guy runs through his script because he knows the cameras are on him, and he knows he can raise some money off of this from his lib base if he owns him. And you're not giving RFK a chance to say anything. If you were to ask RFK, hey, will you ban pharmaceutical companies from advertising on TV? And you force him to answer that question, and he says, yeah, I will. Well, that could potentially scare off Lindsey Graham. That could potentially scare off some of these swing voters because their pharma donors are not going to like that. That's what you would do if you wanted to tank his nomination. They're more interested in raising money off of sound bites than they are in actually doing the job they look like they're trying to do.
Now, the one thing that Bernie is known for, even if he is playing to the crowd to some degree, is that when Bernie does it, it's always substantive. There's always something behind what message he's trying to get out.
It's not personal.
No. And so this is what Bernie had to say. And I actually think the way he framed it was actually really well done.
Like the slogan that you coined, Make America Healthy Again. And I strongly agree with that effort.
First of all, look at the look on her fucking face.
Oh,
she is Keaton. She is so fucking jealous of him. She hates him with a burning passion of 1,000 suns. She's like, how could people like this guy? He's such a curmudgeon. I'm so well educated and so perfect, and I'm Native American, 0.01%, but it still counts. It's shit like that. She really she's worse than Amy Klobuchar, and that's really saying something. That she really got to that level of just complete disdain. But that it's like she hates Bernie more than she hates RFK.
And for what? I mean, most people, when they sell out, they get something in exchange. What did she get? Nothing. They didn't appoint her anything.
That's why she's so bitter.
Yeah. But I did become the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and I think that's a pretty good consolation prize when you think about it in a very non-logical
Hasn't
way.
done shit for us though. So
do you have the onesie video too, or just this one?
I have the one about the donations. I'll get to that in a second.
Right.
So let's play this.
That one.
Despite spending, as you indicated, 2 or 3 times as much per capita on healthcare as other nations, we have 85 million people who are uninsured, underinsured. We have all kinds of chronic illnesses. Our life expectancy is lower than other countries. And for working class people in this country, they are living 6-7 years shorter lives than the top 1%. We got a problem, okay? And I'm going to suggest some ideas that I think can remedy that. Last year, the insurance industry in this country made over $70 billion, while at the same time, 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. Do you agree with me that the United States should join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Yes? No?
Senator, I can't give you a yes or no answer to that question.
because he doesn't support single payer, and he never really has.
And the reason I think that this question was appropriate is because RFK, and I've pointed this out, I thought that he had the most effective presidential run out of anybody, if that's really saying much of anything over the past year. But what he did do was identify two of the most consequential problems in our society today. The first one, of course, is that we are being poisoned with our food supply. No two ways about it. And that is having a direct effect on the fact that we are the most unhealthy developed nation on earth. And then the other one is the takeover of private equity in housing in the United States. And he was dead right about both of them. And he's dead wrong about not supporting single payer. Because if you want to defang corporate special interests that are private insurance and big pharma, that is the only way to do it. And it's the most effective way.
Was that video you just played, was that from today's hearing or yesterday's?
That was from yesterday's hearing. I'm going to get to the one about today.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So from yesterday's hearing, RFK goes on to say, well, it's not all right because, what if you smoke for 20 years and then you get sick and should people have to pay for your treatment?
I don't know. Why don't you ask the fact that like 80% of Europeans smoke and they manage to get their health care?
Well, there's the other thing. Like it undermines his argument that the core, and I think he's correct about this, that the real crux of the problem is our food is poison. Okay, so RFK, what if people get sick from eating the food that you say is poison? Do they deserve health care then? Is it a right then? Was it their fault at that point? I mean, what he's basically saying is it's smokers' own fault they got sick, which Russ came up with a great solution for that. He said, okay, so then let's have the tobacco companies chip in for a private insurance fund where they can supplement the treatment of people who get sick after smoking. But look, the libertarians made a big pitch to RFK, and they supported him. And so he sounds like a libertarian now on this issue. In terms of the effectiveness of his run, yeah, I agree. He played his cards exactly right. And look at the way he played his cards and the way Bernie played his. When Bernie ran, they screwed Bernie. It was like, okay, I guess Joe Biden understands that the 1% can't have it all, so vote for him. All right, I guess. Whereas RFK started running as a Democrat. He realized he couldn't get anywhere, so he switched to independent. Once he got a critical mass of support as an independent, he leveraged that support, went to the Libertarian Convention, made a deal with Trump, suspended his independent campaign, endorsed Trump, and now here he is on the doorstep of HHS, which has been his goal for decades. He said, and I take him at face value. I think he is telling the truth when he says this, which is that, I prayed that I would be in a position to end the chronic disease epidemic. Well, he's there now. And look at the road there. The road was Democratic primary to independent campaign to surrogate for Trump to HHS nominee. Look at how ruthless he was in his pursuit of power. And look at how Bernie showed the exact opposite. Bernie was the exact opposite. They screwed him and he just fell in line anyway. What if Bernie had done that? What if Bernie had run an independent campaign?
He would have won. In 16.
I'm not saying that he would have won. I won't go that far.
I think he could have.
I just being at that convention in Philly in 16, I'm telling you, if he had taken Jill Stein's spot and ran on the Green Party ticket, he would have gotten 15% of the vote. I don't doubt that for 1 second.
Well, which she offered him. Yep.
And she offered it to him. She said, Bernie, take it. I'll let you have it. Why not?
Right.
And he should have done it. That is why we are in the Biff horrific time tangent that we're stuck in right now.
Right. Or he could have gone. Yeah. Or in this example, and because the Democrats, structurally may have not been as accommodating to this, but if he was polling, even if he wasn't polling at 15%, even if he was polling at 6 or 7%, like what RFK was polling this time, he could have gone to Hillary Clinton and said, I'll drop out and endorse you, but I want labor secretary or else I'm going to ruin you. I mean, that's not RFK didn't threaten to ruin Donald Trump, but RFK definitely made a deal. He says, all right, I'll drop out and endorse you, but you got to give me something.
Here's one thing that I will say, and we both know that there was a difference in how Bernie approached this in 2016 versus 2020. Yeah. I do think that he went to Hillary and asked for something significant, and she told him to fuck off.
Well, at that point, then that's why you run as an independent, to have that leverage.
You're
right?
You're absolutely
if you endorse
right.
her anyway and ask her for something, yeah, of course she's going to tell you to fuck off. Why wouldn't she?
So RFK decided that he was going to push back on Bernie today, and this is in a very interesting way. So let's play it.
Going to make America healthier than other countries in the world right now.
Will you guarantee do what every other major country does? It's a simple question.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies; it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay, so he's right on one hand and he's wrong on the other hand. He's absolutely right that the people on that panel are completely bought off by big pharma and private insurance. Where he's wrong about Bernie, and Bernie is going to allude to this, is the fact that Bernie doesn't take donations from corporate PACs and places like that. Individuals who happen to work for the pharmaceutical industry or the private insurance company are the ones donating to him. Shareholders and CEOs and bosses are not giving him shit. So RFK is obligated to be honest here, and he's being half honest. In fact, he's being half dishonest, and that's just as bad as being dishonest altogether as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think you're giving him a little too much credit. I think he is a degenerate, psychopathic liar, and I think this is a good example of that in action. If you want, I could share my screen and I could prove to you. You'll get a sneak peek of what our show is going to be on Sunday. Because I texted this to Russ when I saw this, and I told Russ, I said, we're going to do this on Sunday. I don't care how old it is. I don't care how old it is. We're doing this on Sunday, goddammit. So if you go to Open Secrets, which is the source for his claim, you just got to throw that up on the screen for me, Peter, if you can. Or whoever's back here.
Yep, got it.
It's right. Okay, so if you go there, this is Open Secrets. So this is the source of that claim, right? So you can go here and you can find the source of everybody's funding. So first of all, RFK chooses 2020 as the example because that's when Bernie ran for president. So of course he's going to lead the pack of senators in donations that year because he's running for president that year, right? So of course you're going to be a top donor. We also know Bernie was a fundraising machine. Okay, so let's go here. Pharmaceutical manufacturing, that seems to be what they're talking about. We'll go to the health product as well. Sorry, it takes a little bit of time to load here. Come on. Come on.
Number one in just about everything.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. Okay. So then we don't even have to do that. I'm glad it said. Yeah. Notice that he's number one in everything. He's number one in every field because these are people, these are individuals who donate, who worked in these fields, who donate to him. When you make a political donation, they ask you what line of work you're in so that they can aggregate it in this way, right? So, of course, he's number one. And look, he's top recipients in the Senator. When you look at presidential candidates, look, Joe Biden, 3.3 million from Big Pharma. Donald Trump, 1,100,000. So Donald Trump ended up getting almost 3 times the amount of pharma worker donations or pharma PAC donations. We don't know. Here's the other thing. You can do a PAC recipients for pharmaceutical manufacturing and see who was number one in that respect. It's taking a little time to load here, probably because this site is getting a lot of traffic today because everybody has to vet this bullshit claim that he put out there. So we'll see.
Hold on. Scroll down for a second. I want to see that. Do you mean to tell me that Marianne Williamson got more PAC money than Bernie Sanders? It's
in
like
2020. Yeah.
Oh.
But look at the PAC money. The PAC money, he's nowhere near the top. I think he took $1,100 in PAC money. But if you look at this, he's number one across the board. You know why? Because he had the most small dollar donations of any candidate in the race. And so he's number one in almost all of these fields. So that's why that is just it is a pathological thing to say. It's a diabolical thing to say. Sorry, that's what I meant. But what he's basically saying is that you're corrupted by Big Pharma. Okay, well, he could be corrupt by big clothing and accessories too. He could be corrupted by big earring or big handbag. You could say that as well. 143,000. He tops the list of all of these because he had the most donations and he raised a ton of money.
Count when it's individual donations. That's the whole point. Everyone maxes out their $3,300. And those donors at $3,300, they don't really get to give you. I mean, people, that's not buying somebody, right? So all of these at most are that.
Yep.
Well, it's just an absurd claim. It's just such a dishonest thing to say. I mean, what he's clearly saying there is that you're bought off by the pharmaceutical industry.
Right.
When you look at the PAC donations, he's nowhere near the top. When you look at the individual donations, he's at or near the top in every field because he raised the most money of all the candidates who didn't make it to the general election. Obviously, if you look at the list, Biden and Trump are 1 and 2 total because they went on to the general election that year.
Or just the fact that Biden has taken triple the amount that Trump has taken. It's so bad. But Bernie does have a response.
I just think that RFK
healthier than other countries.
I think it's ridiculous that he did this. Bernie isn't the one that's getting confirmed. Okay, that's not his job.
No, but here's why this matters. Because if you look at how RFK reacted to Senator Warren, Senator Rosen, Senator Bennett, and even Senator Tillis of North Carolina, it didn't even bother him. But Bernie bothered him.
Well, yes, because now he's being called out by somebody who's
Who
fairly
isn't corrupt, and
Exactly.
that pisses him off.
and protecting their interests.
Oh, I thought that would come. No. I ran for president like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers.
In 2020, you were the single largest
Because I had
receiver of pharmaceutical money.
contributions from workers all
First of all, I just want to say, his name is slipping me, but Bernie's guy that's been working with him for like 30 years, who's sitting right behind him. I always like watching his face. He's like, don't fuck with Bernie when he knows his shit. It's not a good idea. And he's out there saying this shit when
it just makes RFK look bad.
It does. It makes him look really bad because he knows that Bernie is not bought. And I don't really know what his angle is or what he thinks he's trying to accomplish. But if anything is going to hurt him, like that will hurt him, and it should, because he should know better.
I mean, I think Bernie should have twisted the knife in even further. I've always thought there was sort of an intellectual laziness about both of Bernie's campaigns, just reciting the same stump speech over and over again. I think he should have said that over and over again to the point where that could not be a soundbite for RFK. But look, this is how RFK. He's a lawyer. This is what you have to understand about RFK. He's a lawyer. He makes lawyerly arguments. What he said about the Medicaid, he says, well, as $900 million worth of Medicaid, has that made people healthier? Well, what are you talking like that is a very lawyerly thing to say. The question is not does Medicaid funding determine the sickness or health of a population, or is it the food supply, as you say out of the other side of your mouth 90% of the time? So it's very sleight of hand. That's the way a lot of lawyers are. And that is his arguing method. That's what he does. That was a very tricky and lawyerly thing to say. And it's something that really, I mean, anybody who's paid any attention over the past several years should be able to know that that's total bullshit. Like, you should be able to identify that as, wait a minute, that makes no sense. That can't be true, because it's not true. And I don't say this as a wholesale defense of Bernie Sanders. Like I said, I think Bernie in many ways really missed his moment and really let the left down in major ways. But that is just a brazenly dishonest thing to say. And that, RFK traffics in that stuff. And that's why it's a shame, because I think there is not just a kernel of truth, but I think there's a pretty, big sum of truth to a lot of what he says. But for everything he says that has merit, he will just lie brazenly. This is a fucking guy. You guys remember the Crystal Ball interview where he actually said, mid-genocide, with Gaza looking the way it does, that Israel sends door knockers to the roofs of Palestinians' home, basically non-explosive projectiles that they fire at a house to warn them hours in advance that they're about to bomb it. He actually tried to convince us, amidst what we're all seeing with our own two eyes, that Israel is warning Palestinians hours in advance of bombing their homes when Gaza looks like a fucking parking lot. He actually wanted us to believe that. Turns out they discontinued that practice 13 or 14 years ago, 2008 or 2009. I forget the exact year. So he is not a credible person at the end of the day. And it's too bad, because I do think our food is poison. I do think if he had his way, he would not allow pharmaceutical companies to advertise on TV, which not only would be good for public health, but it would be good for anti-corruption measures, because then you would have a media that's a little more autonomous than it is now, at least, because they wouldn't be dominated by pharma advertising money. So, there are things that if he were to be confirmed, and I think it's better than 50-50 he will be confirmed. Not a sure thing, but better than 50-50. I think there are things he could do that would be, on a whole, to the benefit of people. But ultimately, he is a psychopathic, degenerate liar. And you can't really say a person who is that brazenly dishonest is fit for a position like that. Like, I wish I didn't feel that way. Is
Well,
he
why?
worse? Is he worse than the average corrupt, goon that would be in that office? No.
That's what I was going to say.
No.
Well-
But like, I mean, the guy is not a credible guy. I'm sorry. He's just not.
Well,
He's just
and
not.
I think that, and I know you got to go shortly, so
Sorry.
I think that this is the perfect story to conclude with. Obviously, you being Jewish from New York, Jen Jewish from Florida. I think that this is something that really hits home because you were raised in this environment, and knowing that RFK has been such a toady for whether, as you have, how do you, please, Jen, how do you so eloquently describe RFK with Rabbi Shmuley?
Said what? That he's up his that he's up his tuchus?
Yeah, there you go.
Very much so. And of course, there has now been rumblings, and we are going to have on an author by the name of Ken McCarthy very soon, who wrote a book regarding RFK and JFK's determination in the early 1960s to have AIPAC registered as a foreign agent. And we all know what ended up happening as a result. So this is a clip that came out the other day, and I think it's very telling when you look at RFK Jr. and how absolutely in the tank he is on issue. Again, there are issues that I think he could do well on, but we cannot deny that maybe the biggest reason he didn't pick up the real kind of traction he could have was because of how married to the Israel cause that he was.
Mossad killed Kennedy because they were so upset over what he did to Ben-Gurion. There's a very surprising series of letters between Kennedy and David Ben-Gurion, not only the premier of Israel, but the founder of Israel, in which they're very angry letters, in which Kennedy is saying to Ben-Gurion, I'm killing myself trying to get a nuclear test ban treaty. I've even got de Gaulle on board, and that's impossible. And you keep testing in Dimona. You've got to stop. And Ben-Gurion, thank you, in so many words says, it's easy for you to say sitting in Hyannisport. I'm sitting with the Arabs all around me, and you want me to give up nuclear testing. And Kennedy threatens him. And he threatens him in such a way that Ben-Gurion resigned. And I will tell you that I found articles, not in any crackpot publications, but in very sophisticated publications saying, forget Lyndon Johnson, forget the CIA, forget Fidel Castro. The Mossad killed Kennedy because they were so upset over what he did to Ben-Gurion.
Is that really a stretch?
No. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch. I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, I think one thing we've learned about Israel, if we hadn't learned it already, is that you could really put nothing past them. My theory about Kennedy was always that, the CIA tried to bait him into a ground invasion of Cuba with the Bay of Pigs, that they basically knew that was going to be a failure, and they were betting on the fact that Kennedy would have to double down and invade Cuba to get the people out who were stuck there. And when he didn't do that at great political cost to himself, they realized, oh shit, this guy is out of our control. He has to go. Right? I think they thought they were going to be able to trick him and bait him into a ground war there. And when he defied them, they're like, because his poll numbers took a massive hit, his first term president, and he took responsibility for that failure and didn't try to save face by going to war. And I think once they realized this guy is not going to double down and give us the war we want, even when we fuck him as hard as we have with this quagmire, I think that's always been my theory of things. But certainly, I mean, you could never put anything past the Israeli state for sure.
Jen?
I don't know. Well, I think any of those things is possible, but I still, to me, think that Kennedy getting killed is more linked to him dismissing Alan Dulles, and more linked to what he was trying to do in unraveling the deep state. And I think that the Dulles brothers were not having it, and their people. That's what I think. But I wouldn't, again, their people also could have easily been the Mossad. For all I know, everybody was working together. There were multiple motives, is the thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's so hard to tell where American interests and an Israeli interest begin and vice versa.
Well, there is no question that if there was a distinct difference between JFK and LBJ, is that JFK was a friend to Israel, but was not pro-Israel. And he understood the plight of the Palestinian people probably better than most. There's so many things that Jack was right about that comes out years later. But if there is one thing that cannot be denied, is just how bad of not just a president, but a human being LBJ really was, and how everything that Jack had worked towards, especially with registering the Israel lobby as a foreign agent, got completely reversed within a matter of weeks.
Hey, there are people who insist LBJ had him whacked. That he was in on it. Yeah.
That's part of it. And that's just Occam's razor. You always look at the persons who have the most to gain from any scenario, right? Like it makes the most sense. And I certainly don't think he was an innocent bystander in it. Let's just say
the best case against LBJ is that it's been reported in numerous publications that JFK was going to drop him from the ticket in 64. And so if that is the case, and knowing who LBJ was, how he operated, I mean, it's like a known thing that the guy had a hitman, for God's sake. I mean,
you say that like it's a bad thing.
Well, you have often said that like Queen Elizabeth lasted as long as she did because she sometimes had to take care of business.
Yes.
And maybe that is just kind of what ultimately ends up happening with a lot of people in positions of power, is that they are willing to go that far. And I'm not saying that Bernie needed to go that far, but when push came to shove and Bernie had to make a decision as to whether he would have allowed himself to become a truly marked man, he wasn't willing to go there in a way that other people in yesteryear like JFK and RFK and MLK were willing to do. And I think was what it came down to.
It seems in retrospect, it was that, he was insistent that he had to, raise issues, and that's what it was about, because there was not only was there a lack of ruthlessness, there was a lack of agility. There was a lack of versatility. He went out and gave the same stump speech every single time.
Yep.
Like, I'm sorry, that can get you from 5% to 45%. But when you're stuck on 45% for 3 months, you got to get to 50%, which means you got to mix it up a little bit. And the campaign always seemed intellectually lazy to me in that respect. Like, he obviously had a lot of physical stamina. I mean, he, like Donald Trump, put in the time. All these rallies, 2-3 rallies a day, zigzagging across the country at a pretty old age. But they did not have the ruthlessness. They did not have, the courage to really fight, and they didn't have the brain power, frankly, to figure out how to get over the top. I mean, why you got a fucking comic book salesman running your campaign? The first time, I understand you never thought it was going to go anywhere, so he kind of had the job, and by the time you realized you had a shot, all right, he was your guy. But how do you bring him back for a senior advisor role the next time? A comic book salesman. What the fuck did he
Democrats.
do?
They love psycho losers.
So So before you go, we can reveal this to you now. So when Jen and I went out to Cleveland to help Nina, the first person that we see as soon as we walk in the door is him.
Right.
And we just had this feeling of, well.
And by the way, that was the second campaign.
Second campaign.
That was
we kind of
the Chantel Brown, the Chantel Brown one, right?
Yeah, but this was the second one. So this was after she got the special election and Nina ran again. Right. And we went there, and sure enough, there he
Jeff is right there as soon as we walk in the door, and there was just this feeling of, oh fuck.
There it is. You're like, it's like 10-time loserness.
Yes, and I respect loyalty, especially in politics. That's very hard to come by because people are so dishonest, but you also have to be able to see the writing on the wall, and if you can't see that, then that's your own shortcoming. And I do feel bad because I think Bernie, remember, Keaton, Bernie got as far as he did in spite of a lot of the things that he did do. And I was pointing this out to Jen the other day. You had people that were so committed to getting him over the finish line that they were setting up makeshift campaign offices in their own fucking house without even being paid. Like, they were so committed to the movement. And I don't know when the hell we're ever going to see something like that again. The only way I think we will see it is if the labor movement takes off in such a way that we can literally change the financial infrastructure and political infrastructure in the country.
Well, that's the thing, generally the order of operations is you're supposed to build a labor movement and then run candidates out of that labor movement. Out of the labor movement comes a candidate. With Bernie, because labor had been so deballed for decades before, we were kind of forced to do it in the inverse order, which is much harder to make work, which is you build a labor movement around a candidate. It's a lot harder to build a labor movement around the candidate than it is to run a candidate through an already established labor movement. The labor movement is what has to come first. And so that's step number one is February 22nd in Seattle.
That's really cool, actually. And I'm going to, that's where Rebecca is. She's in Washington, right? Isn't Rebecca Parsons in Washington?
Send her there.
I feel like we got to merge these groups.
Yeah, send her there. Whoever's close to there, go in person. Yeah, no, everybody needs to get on board. This is to me the most promising opportunity that we've had in a while. And so, yeah, anybody who's in Seattle, if you're in Seattle, workerstrikeback.org. Everybody else, sign up to their email list. This is the point of doing a big super stream with all our peers in this space to get not only as many people watching it, but as many people signed up on the email list, as many people who are contactable, because that's when you could start building local branches, in different cities around the country. And that's how it grows from there. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we are in. We will help in any way that we can.
Cool, man. Well, we'll see you in a few weeks.
Yep. Thank you for fighting the good fight. We are, as we start and as we conclude, we were with you in the very beginning when you had 40 or 50 live streamers. It is
Indeed.
Very gratifying to see you guys succeed in such a tremendous way. And yes, we do thank Jimmy for giving you guys a great boost. You do great content.
Great.
And of course, we do have to work together. And the one thing that I think we can learn from this, Keaton, especially from 16 and 20, we really have to get to a point where people can put their fucking egos aside. They really have to figure that out.
Well, what I want to do is I just want to, that's why I want to just do a super stream and just, invite everybody. I think what we have to do, in this space is really form a coherent, opposition. And that means working together as much as we can. Because otherwise we will just be eaten alive. We're being eaten alive now.
Yep. And you know what? The good thing is that I think there's enough people that could join this movement that, again, as Lincoln said, you can fool some of the people all the time. You can fool all the people some of the time. You can't fool all the people all the time. And I think we're at that stage now where people are now seeing the game for what it is, and they're not going to play it anymore. And that's good. So we're finally getting there. Let's see how we could push it forward. Thank you so much.
I mean, I think we have, I think, the podcaster space is a great space. This is important. If we didn't think it was important, we wouldn't be doing it. But, there's an in-person component to it too. And, Jimmy's been great, not only, in helping us with our show, but also appearing at Jose Vega campaign events and getting out on the ground and making things happen. And, I just think we gotta all try and keep that momentum going, because if we don't, we're going to just keep eating shit. And that's where we are now. The left is sort of at a rock bottom, which I think is the result of a collapse in liberalism, which could give rise to a coherent leftism.
Let's hope that is the case. Thank you so much for coming on.
Good to see you.
See you in a few weeks.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in a few weeks.
All right. Bye.
Absolutely. Great conversation. Always great to have him here.
I wish our chat people weren't so nasty sometimes. And by the way, we can't block Rumble people. That's going to be a problem for me. I don't know if that's something, Colin, you can look into, but
I don't even see the Rumble chat or what anybody's really saying.
No. I saw one thing that I wasn't able to even block the comment, and it was because it's coming through Rumble, not YouTube. But I did not appreciate that. I don't want that crap in there. There was it was.
Was it like a sexual comment in your direction?
No, it was saying like Jews are the problem in the world, and it was just really anti-Semitic, and it was really not okay with me. And I just normally I would just delete the comment, but it won't let me do it because it's through Rumble and not on YouTube. So just guys, I don't like it when people are mean.
Yeah,
in the chat to our guests. And I don't find that to be, people are like, Jen's not for free speech. First of all, I'm not a government institution. This is something I do because I enjoy doing it. You're here at our pleasure because we like doing this. So I don't owe it to anybody.
And a great example of that, you got a lot of people in the chat shitting on Jimmy. And I would say, listen, we have been hypercritical of Jimmy about the things that he's done that we disagree with. And that is Jimmy's biggest flaws. He doesn't want to
care about that. I don't like.
No, but my point is that Jimmy is still willing to push for the things that we're trying to push for.
And
He
again,
uses
I
it.
don't care one way or the other about Jimmy. He ghosted me. I could take him or leave him. I don't care.
Yeah.
What bothers me is that when we have somebody on our show and people are just being rude for the sake of being rude,
Doesn't
that's
solve
not
anything.
no, and it's not a constructive dialogue. If
I
you
agree.
have something particular to point out or a particular question or a particular grievance based on policy, that is something that you put in the chat. But just calling names and just being rude for the sake of being rude is very unproductive, and I just don't like it. And that's just me. And I just don't like it. But that is not, and I don't owe anybody a platform. I don't owe anybody space to be rude to somebody that I'm inviting on to talk. We give you grace to be here and give your opinions, but that's really completely up to us.
Yeah. No, we actually are principled because we do this because we care, not because we're just trying to make money. And speaking of money, Perry Stein, 10
Oh, you got to
bucks.
go way back. Are you going way back?
I am, yes.
Okay.
The media aren't asking the most basic question: why is the military flying training helicopter flights at night near the nation's most busy passenger plane any runway? Agreed. The nation's capital, and they're doing this at
the
night.
most likely response is, most likely answer is incompetence, more so than maleficence. But until more information comes forward that could show any, I mean, I understand that it does look intentional, and it very well could be, but I also know that the complete ineptitude and acceptance of mediocrity across all working peoples knows no bounds.
I agree.
So that's why I think the obvious answer to me is incompetence. But
Fuzzy Balls, great to have you back. I love that profile picture. How could you not? And it's a great play on words. War Pig Bernie, not as anti-war as he likes to make himself out to be. I'll give you that.
He signed the money for Israel.
He sure did. Has turned into a huge disappointment. Bernie, unfortunately, has let us down in more ways than one. But as we've said, much like the conversation we had with Cenk the other day, we could very vehemently disagree with a lot of what Cenk says and does, but make no mistake, a lot of the reason why we are here and fighting the fight that we are fighting today is because of Bernie running the campaign he did in 2015 and 2016, and for Cenk and the Young Turks covering that campaign extensively in 2015.
Right. We just give credit where credit's due. It doesn't give someone a lifelong pass to be wrong on other things. So we call it out when we see it. But there's no reason to just trash talk people that have, for the most part, been net positives in our movement. And Bernie is absolutely a net positive, given that none of us would be doing this had that campaign not happened.
That's a good point. A great point. Fuzzy Balls again with the $5. Thank you so much. Liz Warren is as much of a progressive as she is Native American. You know what? That's actually a very good play on words. I would agree. About 0.01% is how much of a progressive Liz Warren actually is. And you want to talk about somebody who plays to forget that she plays to private insurance and big pharma. You want to talk about somebody who plays to the military industrial complex and never catches the type of shit that she should for
They'll
it.
blame it on the employment factor. I know they all do. They all say it has to do with jobs in their districts and in their states.
Progressive Lefty, great to see you as always. They are just acting for their pharma donors. Good to see Keaton on the show. Agreed and agreed. And yeah, that is it. I mean, think about it. It's such a dead issue at this point. You are finding people speaking out against the corporate special interests of our pro-health, for-profit health system.
Exactly.
We're never hearing people anymore saying, well, it's not such a bad thing. It's because this and that. No, it's because people are now as a consensus. And this is the thing about RFK, win or lose, or his position that I actually think is a benefit. The fact that people are now consistently talking about the poison that is in their food is a testament to how things have to change and how people are being cognizant of that reality in ways before that I don't think they ever were. Willie, great to see you. Liz
Thanks,
Warren,
Willie.
Snake is a human snake for what she did to Bernie. We definitely agree on that. And I will never forgive her for that. And the snake emoji is definitely appropriate for Liz Warren.
I still use it, Willie, when if it ever comes up in a situation, I always put a snake emoji regarding.
And you know why the snake emoji is so perfect for Elizabeth Warren, Jen?
She's a snake.
Because she doesn't like it. That's
Well,
fine.
that just makes it fun to use it. It's appropriate
Absolutely.
because it's appropriate.
Do you remember when she complained about it? She was like, people are
Yeah.
referring to me as a snap. Oh, Liz, thank you
Oh,
so
that
much.
just
Now
makes
I
me
will
wanna do it more.
never stop using it.
Exactly.
That's the best
I
part.
honestly, I feel like I gave her grace for a really, really long time. I didn't like her. I wasn't big on her policies. I didn't like her, whatever. But I never really, whatever, fine. She wasn't my thing. When she accused Bernie of being sexist, that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. And so because it's so ridiculous and she knows it's ridiculous. It wasn't like somehow she truly believed that. No, she didn't. No, she didn't. He asked her. He suggested to her that she run in 15 instead against Hillary. And she, being the coward that she is, didn't do so. But for her to call Bernie sexist was so disgusting to me. And so it really showed how desperate she was, like grasping at straws. And it was just pathetic. And I just I agree, Willie. It was
and you want to talk about somebody who literally has nothing to show for
No,
her.
it's not that she badmouthed her political opponent. I don't have a problem with that. On policy, you want to take up issue with somebody, take it up on policy and on actual things. You don't just make up statements and call them sexist.
I think you just called me a liar.
It's so stupid, and it's low-hanging fruit. So no, that's not challenging your political opponent. That's name-calling and being juvenile.
And let me just say, anybody who gets the presidential endorsement from the New York Times, do not support that person under any circumstances. Just saying. Progressive Lefty, again, with the $2. Thank you so much. I'm still waiting for RFK to debate Max. Listen, I don't think too many people want to debate Max. It generally will not end in a good way.
It won't end well.
Whether it's Max or Aaron, they really know their shit when it comes to foreign policy. And Max has a distinct advantage because of his father and how high up the ladder he was, knowing a lot of things that the general public probably isn't aware of. So when he's bringing the heat, he's really bringing it because he definitely has what it takes to back it up. Jen, our streak continues. Marble Honey, thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member.
Thank you, Marble Honey.
So consistency is the key, as they say. And finally, Fuzzy Balls with the $5. You support regime change missions on proxy wars. You are not a true progressive. Ukraine has exposed the entire left in the Congress and the Senate. Let me tell you something. One of the most disturbing things, when you think about just what a colossal failure the Biden administration truly was, for me, when they showed up on the congressional floor waving the Ukraine flags, at that moment, I mean, listen, I'm not jingoist in any way, but I could at least understand waving the American flag, waving the Ukraine flag. I have never, ever in my life, as many years as I've been following politics, ever seen people in the congressional chamber wave the flag of another country.
Oh, what about Israel?
Well, I've never seen them wave the flag of Israel, but they might.
They just hang it outside their chamber doors, and Brian Mast wears his IDF uniform into the Capitol. Yeah, right. That's right. Same thing.
Absolutely. No, that's the way it is. So unfortunately, Andrew decided to have his panties tied up in a bunch again, and he's run away from our channel. I'm sorry, Andrew.
He really buys into the whole Russiagate shit. He really thinks like that it's like a Russia thing or a Putin thing. Like I can't get into that. It's silly. It's not based on it's not based on reason.
The problem that a lot of these guys don't understand is that you can espouse support for given policies that are actually correct and good, but understand the difference between saying you support something and actually fighting for it. Two different things, significantly. And of course, if you do like our conversations, if you like seeing Dissidence on our show, if you would like to see Jen's former slate mate, Shina Chowdhury, as well as congressional candidate Josh Wheel on Monday, if you want to see Ron Placone, I noticed that Tony mentioned in the chat he hasn't been on Status Quo. He's going to be here next Thursday. If you are so inclined, the following Monday to see Sabi. If you are so inclined to see Ken McCarthy, who wrote the book, JFK and RFK versus Zionism. If you're so inclined to potentially see Ben Cohen, we're hoping to get him.
That would be cool.
And of course, if you'd like to see the return of John Kiriakou.
I'm going to have to talk ice cream, though.
Yes. And then, of course, by the time we get John Kiriakou on, we are going to be at the point where we're going to be doing a super stream with Dissidence. So if you are so inclined and you like our content and what we're trying to do here, please go to patreon.com/generational change for as little as $5 a month. You can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. We are definitely we are the little channel that could. And I'm going to show something to you guys because I just saw it. I don't know how I just noticed it, but as we scroll, as we show the wonderful supporters of our channel, Jen, thank you for checking. Thank you for catching that. I appreciate it. If you are so inclined, if you want to see what type of hilarity that ensues on our channel and the type of things that people who watch our channel are inclined to do, well, these are the types of things that get created. I think that that's pretty funny, even of myself. And what this piece of art tells me, Jen,
what does this represent? Because I think it's so funny. Like this, what is your interpretation of this art?
My interpretation of this art is this is what's going on in your head when I'm going off on a tangent. It's like, God, I have to put up with this shit all the time. Can you understand my pain?
Do you know who did that? I know who did it.
I don't know who did it, but
it was Commie John.
Commie John did it?
Yeah.
I think Commie John did it because I actually participate in capitalism.
I think it's because he sympathizes for my plight in what I have to deal with and the nonsense and the shenanigans. And just
I'm a totally innocent bystander. I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
But you might argue otherwise.
I think that's so funny. But yeah, guys, we're very appreciative of people's artwork. It's just really funny. Yes. I look deep in thought.
Yeah, you're like, what's
I'm like pontificating.
Like, where did he go with that conversation? Yes, and look, we can't please everybody, but we are always going to maintain our integrity. I think that's one thing you don't have to worry about on our channel.
No,
is that we actually stand for what we say, and I think we can have.
I just want people to be nice in our chat. Just be nice.
Yeah.
Just be nice. It's not complicated, people. Pretend you're all in the room together. I like that. It would be like a good cheer. It's a good cheer. Zionism is a bore. Israel should be no more.
Well, the thing that Israel has gotten away with for so long is this idea of, well, if Israel doesn't exist, then all the Jews are going to be dead. No. That's not what it means at all.
No, I think the longer Israel exists increases our odds of all the Jews being dead.
I definitely agree with that.
Because the whole world is turning against us because because places like Israel and people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz consistently tell people that Israel is about Judaism and Israel for the Jews. Israel is not about Judaism.
Here's your spirit. Here's your spirit animal, Jen.
I hear you, and I raise you a bullet and a purple Bic lighter.
Well, I don't have any of those. Well, no, I mean, I like how you make sure to do it right into the microphone so that people know you're legitimately. I didn't inhale, but Jen definitely does.
Yeah.
Do we want to do one more little thing?
If you want to hit it, that's fine. Oh yes. Oh, I love a comeuppance. I love a comeuppance.
So it's not a surprise. It's been kind of like a not so hidden secret for many, many years that Bob Menendez, for all intents and purposes, may be the most corrupt senator in all of politics. He's from the Soprano State, my home state of New Jersey.
He looks like it.
Menendez has been bogged down in scandal for many years. It's not like the gold bar story is something that just came out of left field. It's something that has been going on for quite some time. He has had scandal upon scandal upon scandal, and now he is going to federal prison. He is also somebody who is desperately trying to get President Trump to give him a pardon. So he's getting 11 years on bribery charges. I got to tell you, Jen, at his age,
he's not doing 11 years. At best, he would do 2, maybe 2.5 years. He's not doing 11 years.
He is the type of person that if he's still in prison in 4 years when Trump's on his way out, maybe then he might give him a pardon. But Bob Menendez is going to federal prison. Like, it's going to happen.
Yeah, he's going to federal prison. He's not going to be there long. And I don't think he's going to be in a facility that's like, look, he'll probably be at like Club Fed, like a Martha Stewart situation. And again, when you're incarcerated, you're incarcerated. And having your liberty taken from you is a big deal no matter where it is. But he's not going to like some general population with scary people. However, that being said, someone like him is not going to live long that way.
I agree.
But I don't see him. I mean, yeah, he's not like going to some scary penitentiary somewhere. Like, you're not going to get that satisfaction. He's not being somebody's bitch. That's
No.
not happening. So, right. So it's not.
But
like
are you?
Yeah.
But are you suggesting that the only way that we can actually take down this corrupt political system and the bought off representatives that we have to deal with on a regular basis is to get caught with $400,000 worth of gold bullion in your fucking closet? And
well, that just makes you the low hanging fruit because you're stupid.
Well, you also get to a point where you think that you are untouchable. It's the same thing with Wasserman Schultz. Like
hubris.
How brazen with insider trading do you think you can be? Like,
well, it's not illegal. Why would they not do it?
It is illegal, but they don't enforce the law. That's the thing.
They don't have to. They don't have to. It's not a problem for them.
Rules for thee, not for ye. That's it. That's how they look at it. Like, but we're allowed to get. Nancy Pelosi is confronted about insider trade. We're capitalists. We're playing the free market. That's your excuse.
Well, that was Buttigieg's response to why babies weren't getting infant formula and we were having a shortage was, well, we're a capitalist system. I guess they'll just have to drink water. Oh, well, that's poison too. Well, again, capitalism. Got to give our water to the resnicks. Can't share it with the rest of us. They paid a lot of money for it.
And honestly, Colin, if you can even find that tweet that was just put out the other day about Buttigieg seriously considering, Jen, whether he's going to run for the U.S. Senate in the state of Michigan.
I want him to. I want them to run because it's not going to go well. And I like it. I like it when, look, it benefits.
You really think he's going to face plant?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
He's ridiculous. His record is crappy. When you really look at him and listen to him, it's not good. And he really has no substance to stand on. His actual record, which will come out when you start really campaigning, is not good. All you have to do is go talk to an average run-of-the-mill citizen in South Bend and ask them their opinion of Mayo Pete. It's not good.
How did he do?
He did really crappy. He was a really shitty ass mayor there. Not for the gentrification crowd. If you ask people that are into gentrification, they will tell you he did a fine job. If you ask the working people that are suffering from gentrification, they're not such fans. So again, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Well, I like how the first response is he can go right back to Indiana. Yeah, you know what? Honestly, if there's one thing that I think, especially in a state like Michigan, where people don't understand that Midwestern thing is a real thing, they don't take kindly to carpetbaggers. People that are just showing up to their state, who are not from there, who have nothing to do with their culture, thinking that, and not only am I going to carpetbag here, but I'm going to run the entire state. I am going to, it'd be one thing if he was going to carpetbag to go run for a congressional seat. He's carpetbagging to run the entire state. Like, that's really.
And he's going to fail gloriously. This is another example of Democratic elite leadership not reading a room. They're just not reading the room. Let's look at how Kamala did in Michigan. Let's look at how the Democrats just did in Michigan for an example as to how popular right now Democrats are. We're talking about a state that was the basis of an entire campaign called Abandon Biden and Abandon Harris. That is telling. They have a very sizable Muslim population also not having it. You've got people with poisonous water that have had it like up to, I can't even tell you, with bullshit and lies. I just don't see him getting through. I think Michigan has had it.
No, he is from South Bend, Indiana. He has no background whatsoever in
But he
Michigan.
bought a house in Michigan.
But he
However,
bought a house there.
yeah.
So that counts.
This was put into place so that he could run there. If that was the thought. No,
you and I were. I told you this again. This is something where one of the advantages that we do have is that we never reveal sources. We never say who shares information with us. But I knew about Buttigieg moving to Michigan like 3 years ago, and I told Jen. I said, he's fucking moving there because the motherfucker is a sociopathic, ambitious piece of shit.
And he knows he could never win a state.
Win in Indiana. Can't win shit.
No.
And you know what's even more amazing? He might have been able to win a congressional seat in Indianapolis if he was willing to, have a little humility. But he has no humility. Zero. He's like, I'm a big shot. I'm going for the big
and
roles.
That's why I cannot wait for him to fail gloriously. Travers, what the F are you talking about? I said Muslims are fat. I did not.
Proudfoots, I would love to hear.
Petite and svelte.
And I would love to hear what Proudfoots has to say about it.
Please, Proudfoots, if you have any commentary, but I know that his record there was, but exactly. Well, she was going to run for that seat too. Exactly. This is what they do.
Well, that's the other thing. One thing you have to remember is that I'm still convinced that Hillary wouldn't have been able to win if she wasn't the people still forget that she ran for the U.S. Senate as the sitting first lady of the United States. People still forget that. She ran for that for over a year as the first lady. It would have been almost impossible for her not to win.
But so basically, here's the thing: is that Indiana is a red state, and they know, and Pete knows that he wouldn't be able to win a statewide race in Indiana. Yeah. But Michigan, which is really close, South Bend to Michigan is really close. Like it's like they're almost neighbors, and yeah, exactly. So there's a good point. He moved there with that idea. Because that at least you have a chance in a state that has at least the potential for a blue candidate to win a statewide seat, which he wouldn't have in Indiana. But I just think that if you look at this past election and what has been going on in Michigan, they are just over. They are over it.
Sable, thank you. We're y'all aware in comments there is someone sending out a Wisconsin phone number posing as Jen Change. Spam for sure, but persistent. Got 3 to.
What?
That's news to me.
That's so funny.
What's even more funny is that we're not even that big of a channel. Like, why?
No, but what's funny about that is, like, how could that even happen? How could that even happen? Like, first of all, those things cost money. So why would somebody want to spend money to do that? That's so weird.
Some people just want to come after us in a way that is just completely stupid and doesn't make any sense.
That's expensive to send out texts like that. Like
that's
ridiculous.
No,
what are they saying? I don't understand, but yeah.
The last thing I'm going to leave you guys with, and I was hoping that Keaton was going to be here for it, guys. We are 37 subscribers away from 20,000. Pretty big deal. So if you guys are not currently,
we'll get the 100K plaque. I'm going to have a walker.
Jen's going to be well. Jen might actually already be in Oregon getting her happy pills, but before
I could be dead by the time.
Yeah,
we get
so let's not make it that long. But let's cross 20,000. It's a special number. We remember how long it took for us to get to 10,000, but we have definitely climbed the ladder significantly over the past few months. We hope to continue up that path. So if you aren't currently subscribed, please make sure that you do, and please make sure to hit that like button. Please make sure that you are sharing our live stream. That as soon as our live stream is over, that you leave a comment and continue to spread the word, because that is how we get done.
Thank you,
Proudfoots, we really appreciate you being here, my friend. And that was before you said you subbed. Just your commentary was great. Yeah. And Doug has been with us, probably another one who's been with us from the beginning. Traverse City, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Interesting.
But he's a fraud. He's a total fraud.
He's a Manchurian Democrat. It doesn't like he's just their whatever. He won't do well there. I'm telling you, the people of Michigan are definitely rising. And they have a lot of reason to be pissed off. They've had they have a Democratic governor that's a complete piece of crap that isn't helping them in any way. Why in the world would they? Muhammad, I didn't call Muslim people fat. Just know
No, he's saying tremendous work.
No, I know. I just saw that and I saw the comment and it's like, I didn't. Although the food is really good in some cases.
Yes,
so
it is.
Kind of understand it, but that's not what I never said that.
Well, Travers likes to troll us.
I know Travers is.
But he means
Hey,
that.
Travers, guess who's going to be in Scotland this summer?
Scotland. Oof. That sounds like a great trip.
I know.
Like you're a Scotsman.
I do like a I do like a Scotsman.
We appreciate you guys.
A lot of boys, there's all different kinds of boys, all different kinds of accents, all different kinds of cute boys. I like cute boys.
Last thing before we go, again, just to reiterate, Monday night, Jen's brand new Congress slate mate, Shainat Chaudhry, is going to be coming on.
He's a really cute boy too.
And he is a writer from Mondale Weiss. Chaudhry it was actually in Palestine. So he's going to have firsthand account. Shania it was just in Palestine, and he's going to have a lot to say about what he saw on the ground there. And then we'll also be speaking with Josh Wheel, who's running against maybe the biggest scum sucker Republican in Florida, Randy Fine.
Yeah. You guys don't know him, and fortunate for you, but we'd like to keep him out of Congress because he's our problem here in Tallahassee.
Then, of course, like I said, next Thursday, we'll have Ron Placone. Following Monday, we are going to have Sabby Sabs. And then, of course, we're also working on Ben Cohen, John Kiriakou, Ken McCarthy. Got a lot of great guests coming up. We appreciate you all being here.
Thanks,
Smash
guys.
that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday.